Yes, indeedy, folks. It's the Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo. It's Halloween. And just for Halloween, we have two stories for you. Well, kids, you know it's close to Halloween. Very scary. I was afraid you might not have known it since they don't hype it very much, so I thought I'd let you know. It's tomorrow. That is, if I've finally gotten these shows coordinated with when they're shown. I did get a little bit curious about it, so I went out exploring some stories about Halloween. And now, let's go check out a couple of them. The first of our stories is about crossing the devil. Don't be frightened, children. You won't have nightmares. This is the story of Stingy Jack. Now, Stingy Jack was an Irish lad and a farmer. As Jack went along, he got crankier and crankier and stingier and meaner. Stingy Jack just loved to pull mean tricks on people. And Stingy Jack, he would lie and he would steal any time it would get him a little bit further ahead. Aye, indeed, Stingy Jack's reputation for being an ornery cuss got so widespread that the devil himself heard about it. Stingy Jack's reputation was so bad that even the devil himself had to admit that he might be a bit jealous. So one night, Stingy Jack was walking along on his way to the pub, and he noticed a stranger by the side of the road. When he found out it was the devil himself, he decided, well, there's no sense in trying to fight it. So he invited the devil out to have some drinks with him. The devil saw nothing wrong with that, so off they went to the local pub. Everyone said hello to Stingy Jack, of course, but everybody moved away from his favorite chair because nobody particularly wanted to sit and chat with him or this stranger that he came in with. Jack and the mysterious stranger sat for a while and drank many pints, until finally Jack turns to the stranger and he says, well, he says, it seems you've got me soul, he says. I'll tell you what, I'll let you have it if you'll pay for what we've drunk tonight. Well, seemed like a pretty easy deal to the devil, and so the devil turned himself into a sixpence in order to pay for the drinks. Now, as soon as the devil was a sixpence, Stingy Jack, he snapped up that coin and he stuffed it in his pocket, right next to a crucifix he was carrying in there. The devil knew he'd been had. After all, the devil could not change form in the presence of a crucifix. The devil was mighty angry. He just was beside himself with being tricked like this by a stingy old fool. And he swore and he carried on, and finally Stingy Jack says to him, he says, I'll let you out. I'll let you be away from the crucifix. But the price is, you have to let me live another 10 years. You cannot take me to hell for 10 more years. The devil, he wasn't a bit happy about it, but what's 10 years to the devil? And so he agreed to Stingy Jack's terms, and Stingy Jack set him free. Well, the experience didn't change a thing. Stingy Jack just got crankier and meaner. And it wasn't long before those 10 years had passed. Sure enough, 10 years later, Stingy Jack was walking to the pub, and who should be there but the devil looking for his due. "Ah," said Stingy Jack, "you got me this time. There's nothing I can do. But you know, I'm starving, man. Would you mind going up in that tree and get me that apple up there, that apple that looks so happy?" Well, compared to the Stingy Jack burning forever, it seemed like a small request. And if there's one thing that pisses off a devil, it's a happy apple. So the devil just scurried right up into the tree to get that apple. No sooner had the devil scurried up the tree to get the happy apple than Stingy Jack ran around the tree, putting crucifixes all around the trunk of it. And once again, the devil was caught. Well, to put it mildly, the devil was cross. "You double-crossing trickster," the devil demanded. "You let me out of this tree this instant, do you understand me?" And Stingy Jack, he looked at the devil and he says, "I've had 10 years to think about this, devil, and my terms to you are, you never take me to hell. You never admit me in hell, and then I will let you out of the tree. Then I will take away the crucifixes." Ah, the devil wasn't happy about it at all, but what could he do? He couldn't live forever in an apple tree. So he agreed to the terms. Well, Stingy Jack, he lived for a while and he had kept having a good time. But his drinking and his cussing and his carrying on and his being mean, they finally got to him and he died. So when he found himself dead, he just walked right in through the pearly gates, figuring there ain't nowhere else for me. But old St. Peter, he says, "Now wait a minute there, Stingy Jack. You've been living your life mean and cussing and being cruel to people. We don't want you here in heaven. You go and you find yourself some other place to spend eternity." So Stingy Jack, he went to hell. And he says to the devil, he says, "Devil, take me in, I'm yours. I have nowhere else to go." But the devil's a man of his word, folks. The devil looked at Stingy Jack and he says, "No, Stingy Jack, we have a deal. You don't get into hell." "But devil, pleaded Stingy Jack, "where am I going to spend all of eternity?" The devil replied, "Stingy Jack, you go back to where you came from, and you roam there for all eternity." Oh, but it was a windy and extremely dark night, and Stingy Jack pleaded, "Devil, give me a light, let me find my way." Well, the devil did admire Stingy Jack for how mean and cantankerous he was, and he agreed to let Stingy Jack have a light to see his way home. The devil took an ember from hell itself and gave it to Stingy Jack to light his way. Well, the ember was hot as the dickens, and Stingy Jack couldn't touch it. So Stingy Jack took out of his pocket his favorite food, which he always carried with him, and he hollowed the food out, and he put the ember in it with some holes so that it would be a lantern that he could carry on the way home. Except, of course, there was no home. Stingy Jack wanders the earth to this day with his lantern. Especially you see him on the Irish holiday of Samhain, the holiday that celebrates the harvest. Stingy Jack and his turnip with a candle inside. And that, my children, is the ancient Celtic story of Jack of the Lantern. But my pretties, I promised you 2 stories. If the story of Stingy Jack did not scare you away, this one is even scarier. For this story is not of the devil, but rather of the church. Whoa! Well, folks, actually it's about the church and a much more ancient tradition. This beautiful brass mirror is from the Roman era. It was made by Celtic artists in Ireland. The Celts had been living a long, long time in the Northern Hemisphere, and they had long and ancient traditions. One of the greatest of these traditions happened in the fall. It was a harvest festival. All people of all eras have celebrated the harvest. Nor are the Celtic traditions dead. This photograph from 2006 in New Hampshire celebrates the New Hampshire Renaissance and Samhain celebration. In this particular photograph, we see the ancient tradition of beautiful wenches and strapping young lads being auctioned for one another. Certainly a handy way to cover up any summer indiscretions that you may have been left with a daughter or a girlfriend to have to deal with. And, I am sure, such an autumn custom was equally important to serve the women of the tribe as a way to get that which they needed and which they were interested in. It was this celebration of Samhain that the ancient Celts always celebrated on what is now October 31st. No doubt, besides figuring out who was to bed one another for the winter, one of the important things of the celebration was to take stock of the food that was available to get through the winter. It was a time to decide what slaughtering had to be done. And it was a time to preserve the food for the coming hard times. No doubt, then, as today, it was also a time of burning the refuse that was left from summer, burning the piles of leaves, burning the twigs that were in the way, and, yes, burning the bones and other parts of the animals that were slaughtered that were not useful and that would become dangerous if they were left around to rot. There is no doubt the ancients understood that the stench of rotting flesh, which of course there would be left on the bones, was a signal of the danger of disease. It has long been known that fire is the great purifier. So it was a time when great bonfires covered the landscape and the smell of smoke was everywhere. Of course, autumn is also when things are dying. Without the death, there would be no food. Without the death, there would be no resurrection. The resurrection we know as spring. In celebration of this, and in celebration of feeling the smoke and the fire and the cold, it also became known as the celebration of the dead, the night of the dead. The line between the living and the dead became blurred, and once again the dead were able to come back and haunt the living. So, over the years, it came that the fires were not only for taking care of the needs of life, but also they were there to scare away the evil spirits, scare away those dead that should not be walking amongst us. There were many traditions came of Samhain, many traditions we now know as Halloween. So, how did this ancient pagan tradition come to be a celebration that we today celebrate throughout the land? For years, I thought the Catholic Church had simply usurped the holiday and called it All Saints' Day. Actually, the story is a bit more complicated than that, and a bit more amusing. It turns out that All Saints' Day is not on the day of Samhain at all. Indeed, All Saints' Day was originally a springtime celebration. The story goes back to 609 or 010, we're not sure which. The church was busy turning everything magnificent from the ancient world into a Christian monument, and they set their sights on the Pantheon. There are many stories we can tell you of the Pantheon. However, what is germane to our story today is this. In 609 or 610, the Pope consecrated the Pantheon in the name of the Blessed Virgin and all the martyrs. Part of consecrating the new space was to declare a new feast day, the Feast of the Day of the Martyrs, also known as All Martyrs' Day. The day that the Pope chose was May 13th. This was the same day that the ancient pagans celebrated as the Feast of Lemurs, the day that the malevolent and restless spirits of the dead were appeased with feasts and other celebrations that would appeal to them. The Day of the Martyrs, of course, was a more important thing than just celebrating the saints, because, after all, the saints were good folks, but the martyrs had been martyred. In the ensuing years, there were changes made to the holiday. One of those changes was it became, instead of All Martyrs' Day, All Saints' Day. They loosened the rules on what it took to be celebrated. One very romantic telling of the story of the changing of the name from All Martyrs to All Saints is the story of the Byzantine Emperor Leo VI, also known as the Wise. Leo's wife had lived a devoted life, and after his death, he wanted to build a church to her. When the Orthodox Church would not let him dedicate the church to his wife, Leo decided that he would dedicate it to All Saints. When his church was dedicated, Leo decided to expand the commemoration of all martyrs to the commemoration of all saints, whether they were martyrs or not. Leo's thinking was that if his wife were in fact one of the righteous, she would be honored whenever the feast was celebrated. It is a lovely romantic tale, and it is generally given as the time when All Martyrs' Day became All Saints' Day. However, Leo was an emperor living in the Eastern Byzantine Empire. He was around from 886 to 911. Records show that in the Western Roman Catholic Church, the Day of All Martyrs had already changed to All Saints' Day long before Leo and his beautiful wife. By the time of Pope Gregory III, about 120 years after the dedication of the Parthenon, the Day of the Martyrs was already referred to as All Saints' Day. It was Pope Gregory III who moved All Saints' Day from the 13th of May to the 1st of November, exactly one day after the Celtic ancient tradition of celebrating Samhain, the celebration of the harvest. Some 100 years later, in 835, Pope Gregory IV standardized the date of All Saints' Day as November 1st throughout the entire Western Church. According to Catholic theology, the saints are those who have a beatific vision. They see God directly when they enter heaven. For the departed who have been faithful, however, who have not yet been purified enough to reach heaven, the next day, November 2nd, was dedicated as All Souls' Day. Indeed, over the centuries, between the pagans and the Christians, the dates from October 31st through November 5th have become a hodgepodge of celebrations. All of these celebrations of the fall, of the time when life is dying and becoming food, have in common a challenge to the coming cold and the dark, while at the same time reveling in the mystery and the magic of it. But how is it that All Saints' Day and Samhain, the ancient Celtic celebration, have come to be celebrated at the same time? For that, dear friends, we have to look at the quirks of calendars. Samhain is celebrated on the last day of October and goes through the night in order to keep the spirits away. However, Pope Gregory III in the 8th century was using the Florentine calendar when he established November the 1st for All Saints' Day. In the Florentine calendar, just as in the Hebrew calendar, the day starts at sunset of what we call the day before. So, while the celebration of Samhain goes into the night, the celebration of All Saints begins at the same time. And now, as a final consideration, let's look at the language. Just as we call it All Saints' Day, there are many times that it was called All Hallows' Day, as in all of those who are hallowed or holy. All Hallows' Day is on the 1st of November, which of course means that the eve for All Hallows' Day is on the 31st of October. All Hallow Eve was also pronounced All Hallow Even, and from All Hallow Even we have come to inherit Halloween. And when we speak of we, let's speak specifically of the United States. The Puritan tradition in the United States kept pretty well all observations of any holiday and any festivity out of our calendar. Certainly something as Catholic and as pagan as celebrating a harvest festival other than Thanksgiving, of course, would not be allowed on our shores. All this changed because of these people, the starving poor of Ireland. Between 1845 and 1852, the potato crop of Ireland crashed and the people starved. Between those who starved and those who emigrated, it is estimated that over 20% of the population perished or left. It is estimated that over 1 million found new homes, many of them in the United States. Almost immediately, the United States saw the observation of Samhain and Halloween. Today, of all the holidays that we celebrate in the United States, only Christmas sees our people spend more money celebrating it than Halloween. And from all of this, what happened to old Stingy Jack and his lantern? Jack, oh, the lantern. Well, as far as I know, in the old country, Jack is still carrying his lantern in a turnip or sometimes a parsnip. However, in the United States, pumpkins were very plentiful. Indeed, long before the arrival of the Irish, pumpkins were very common in the fall to have carved and put out as an observation of the changing of the seasons. Because pumpkins were larger and easier to carve and easier to put a candle in our country, Jack and his lantern became the jack-o'-lantern. And that, folks, is the two stories of Halloween that we have to celebrate today. I certainly hope this has not been too scary for you, and you will be able to enjoy the many mysteries and the dark magics of the celebration of Halloween. Yeah. And that's our special harvest celebration of the Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo. Thanks for watching. See you next week. And remember to keep celebrating the Great Wahoo!